It's 2 weeks straight, and then we get a dead period for about a month, and then we hit it again for about 2.5 more weeks in January. So you're on the road every day. You have a lot of different kids you have to see. From the kids you have committed to your priority kids that are uncommitted. And you're trying to juggle that schedule to see those guys each week to show them how important they are. So you're in multiple cities a day at times, and you do what's necessary to get in front of the kids that you have to see.
I'm sorry, Terry, going back to Joe Moorhead, I wondered if there were any instances where, you were he was looking at one of your kids and you remember him maybe his recruiting pitch, or do you remember any of that about him as far as that aspect?
Funny story. When he was at Akron, he recruited my son, Justin King. And at the time, clearly, Justin was a national prospect, and Joe recruited him probably as hard as anyone in the country. And he knew he didn't really have an opportunity to get Justin to Akron, but his recruitment was based on if things didn't work out, he would be there for Justin if it didn't work out. But Justin and I actually spoke on this past week, and he remembers that recruitment. He remembers how well he was recruited, and just stated how much he liked Joe and how much he liked when he recruited him.
Terry, as you continue to evaluate Georgia's personnel, what players really stick out to you?
Well, the running back's really good. Even though he's the backup, but Georgia just keeps a stable of running backs. He's a legit 1,000-yard rusher. And they have 3 receivers that are really good. They're explosive in the punt return game. I think they have 3 punt returns for touchdowns. And they're dangerous in that sense that if you get them out in space, they have speed. They can score in one play. So we've got to contain the run game. We've got to shut that down and force them to be one-dimensional, which is the pass game, and just not allow any big plays.
Terry, James talked about how in early practices for the bowl, you get a lot of chances to work with the younger guys. Can you tell us about some of the kids who may be redshirting over there on defense that you got a chance to maybe look at again and how they've come along since they've gotten here?
Yeah, there's quite a few guys, up front, Robert Windsor and Camonte Carter and those guys, Sharif. The Wild Dogs will replenish. Clearly, we'll lose some experience with Zetto and Nassif and those guys. But those guys in a year or two are going to be really good. And we've got a chance to look at those guys these last few weeks with young guy scrimmage, and they're promising guys for the future. On the back end, we have a couple of safeties, Aaron Moreau, Jarvis Miller, John Patrician. Those guys are really, we're looking forward to those guys in the spring, allowing those guys to compete for some playing time and contributing, whether it be on special teams or in the secondary itself. And then at the corner position, a guy like Amani Oworuwe, who's in his second year here, he's showing some promise. Daquan Worley is showing some promise, and then the true freshman Garrett Taylor has had a great last month. So there's guys that are showing a lot of promise, and we're just looking forward to having the opportunity to work with them more and more.
I wanted to follow that up, Terry, about Kevin Gibbons. What have you seen from Kevin? Is he still at end, or is there any chance of a tackle?
Kevin's still at end. I did not omit him on purpose. Just there's so many guys up front on the defensive line. Kevin is having a great year for us. We're really excited about him. He's really explosive and powerful, and he could be a similar type player as Aaron Donald, like we watched last night. He has that type of pop and explosion, and clearly has some work to do to close that ground, but he's going to be fun to watch.
I think a lot of our young guys have really taken advantage of these extra practices. Guys like Urban Charles, Jawan Johnson, some of the offensive linemen, Sterling Jenkins, Gonzalez, and Bates. So we're really excited about a lot of the young talent we have in the program. These guys got a really high ceiling. They continue to learn. They're a very talented group, but they're also a very smart group when it comes to football. So they take a lot of pride in learning the offense, and so we're excited what the future holds. These guys obviously got to continue to develop, but they all got bright futures.
You talked a good bit in the preseason about what we could expect from Chris Godwin. But how much did he maybe even exceed your expectations? And were you confident that he could be so great at the 50-50 balls and have the kind of year that he did?
I was very pleased with Chris Godwin's performance this year. I think people saw a glimpse of kind of what I was talking about. He's a very talented player. He's a very mature player. Takes a lot of great pride in how he practices and prepares himself. And I think that showed up in his production on the field. So he's got a very bright future. He's a great kid. He's an awesome teammate. He's truly a leader for us on our team. And he's a guy that we're really, really excited about. He's only going to continue to get better as the years come. But as you all were able to see, he had a great season. And he's looking forward to building on that in the bowl game and as future seasons come ahead.
Josh, Irvin and Juwan Johnson are two of those bigger body guys that you have. How difficult do you think it was for them not being able to be out there this year? Because obviously everybody wants to play. What have you seen from those two specifically?
Oh, they handled it great. They are competitors, so they did want to go out and contribute. Those two guys, they love the game of football. That's one thing that really stands out about those guys. Juwan's always in doing extra work. He's always in the weight room getting an extra lift, or going outside with the quarterbacks. You see him and Tommy going outside throwing. And they just do that because they love the game of football. So, we're really excited about those two guys just as much as we are about everyone else in our program. They're going to have a bright future here. And we're really excited to get them on the field at some point.
Hey, Josh, over here. Coaching profession, you guys all know each other. How much do you guys keep tabs on coaching hires? Maryland now has 3 head coaches for the defense. How much do you guys talk among yourself? How much is that of interest internally?
Well, you see things, through social media or through the internet, but we don't spend a lot of our time during the day, reading up on a lot of that stuff. We can only control what happens in our program and in our building, and make sure that, we have the best staff, the best players, and we get those guys ready for the game. And so, there's a lot of coaching changes that happen in college football. That's the nature of the business. But we mostly focus on us and focus on everyone that's in our building.
Staying on that topic, Josh, have you met Joe Moorhead before, and what are your first impressions of him, if not?
My first time meeting Coach Moorhead was at the Pittsburgh Nike Clinic. I listened to him speak there, was very impressed with his presentation. He knows what he's talking about. He's been very successful as an offensive coordinator, as a play caller. His offense has produced really, really good numbers. It's a friendly offense for every position on the offense. So, we're excited. Coach Moorhead's been kind of buried away in the office these past few days, kind of studying our roster, studying our film, as well as kind of going through a lot of the HR stuff that he has to do early on. So, I know our kids are excited. We're looking forward to having Coach Moorhead around from here on out. And, after this bowl game, we'll switch over and kind of make the switch and start learning his offense.
Josh, how much of a grind was it leading up to the dead period and recruiting? And then what's it like when that switch is flipped? Is it a relief, or are you, kind of in the mode of I still should be talking to people, still should be doing that sort of thing?
It's a grind. After the last game, you don't get a chance to kind of put that game to rest because you're moving on to recruiting. The evaluation period opens up, so we hit the road. We've been gone for the past 2 weeks. So it seems like a lot of time has been away from Lash and a lot of the time away from our players. So we're excited to get back, get around our guys and get more into these developmental practices as well as we start preparing for Georgia. But, recruiting never stops. And right now we're in a dead period. So we are able to take some days away from being on the road and be around our guys. But we got to continue building towards the future as well as developing the players that we have in our program today.
Josh, James just talked about Austin and Christian submitting paperwork to the NFL Draft Advisory Board. You played in the NFL for a little bit. Did you go through that process? And if so, could you kind of describe what that was like for you? And what type of advice would you give to somebody nowadays looking to get that type of information and that type of input?
Yes, I did go through that process. I was fortunate enough as a player. I've submitted just to get the feedback. As a player at that time, I knew I was coming back. I didn't have kind of the options that some of these other guys have. But I did go through that procedure as far as getting feedback from the NFL, and it's a very honest feedback that the NFL gives you, and they kind of tell you, what's in your best interest from their standpoint. And then obviously each kid's got to sit down and weigh their best interest, not only from their football, their academic, as well as their social life and family life structure standpoint. So, obviously it's a stressful time for a lot of kids because they want to make the best decision. And you can imagine 19, 20-year-old kids are getting pulled in a lot of different directions. Not necessarily are they all for the benefit of the kids. So, kids just got to make sure that they're leaning on the people close to them, leaning on making the right decisions that are not only going to help them be successful for the next 4 to 10 years of their NFL career, but for the next 40 years of their life. So it is a stressful time for the kids, but our kids have handled it great. They stayed focused to the season. We haven't had any distractions. That's first and foremost. So they've been great teammates throughout this whole process. And they're looking forward and they're excited for this bowl game. So after the bowl game, as coaches always stated, those guys handle things the right way, and any decision that they make, they'll release it in what time manner that they decide with Coach Franklin. And, we're all 100% supportive. Obviously, we love those guys as players. We love those guys as teammates, just like each man in that locker room. But we know in the end, those kids will make the best decisions for them.
One more a little bit on that feedback that you get from them. What exactly is it? Do they give you some sheets of paper that say pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses? Is it real personal, or is it just, this is what round we think you're going to go in?
It's usually in a round standpoint. Now, that was 2006 for me, 2005, 2006. So, that things could have changed, but it's just like getting a test score back, from an ACT or SAT. You open it up and it has a round that they kind of see you at, as far as, if there's a top 3 or mid-year guy, or for some later rounds, they do obviously give you the feedback of that it would be in your best choice to stay in school. I think the NFL has been cautious over the last few years, because you're seeing a number of college athletes declare early for the NFL draft, and the percentage on the number of those athletes that are not getting drafted is increasing. So the NFL is kind of taking a hard approach about how they are evaluating these younger athletes, because ultimately we want what's best for each athlete, and what's best for each athlete is that they get their college degree, because no matter if you go to play 2 years or 10 years, you're always going to need that degree to fall back on. So they want to make sure that they're giving the best advice possible to make sure that these kids go ahead and be successful in life, not just on the football field.
Josh, what kind of improvements have you seen from Brandon Polk this year, besides the speed sweep stuff, just kind of as a receiver? What strides have you seen him take this year? He's taken
a lot of strides. As a young guy, a lot of people don't understand how hard it is to come in and play as a true freshman. Not only is he juggling learning an offense, but he's juggling taking 12 credits and getting acclimated to his college schedule. So his maturity put him in this position where he's able to handle a lot of things. Obviously, he's a very talented football player. When the ball is in his hands, he's one of the very few players in college football that is electric on the field. But he's grown as a receiver in his route running and his ball skills, really understanding concepts and understanding spacing. So he's another kid that's got a very bright future. I love working with him each and every day. He's developing. I'm very, very pleased with where he is. Obviously, when we're playing the amount of players that we are playing, some guys may not get certain opportunities as others, but he's truly made an impact, and he changes the game in a number of different ways in which a lot of people don't notice, because when you're a defensive coordinator and you're on defense, you've got to account for that guy being on the field. So there's some things behind the scenes that maybe he does to certain defenses that he may not get credit for, as far as making them have certain calls, making them have certain adjustments to the sweeps or whatever. But you notice on film how defenses play when he comes in the game. So I'm very pleased with his production, very pleased with where he is in his development, and really excited about him moving forward.